Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Tune In with Katrina. Today is November 10th, and the energy for this week is all about focus. We have been moving through so much as humans. This year, the year of 2025, which is the year of the snake, the year of transformation, has not gone light on anyone that I know anyway. Maybe it has for you, and if so, congratulations. But for me, for so many I know, for all my clients, everybody seems to be wrestling with something within themselves, something that is forcing them to look deeper within and really, really reconcile some of the pieces of them that might be remaining in shadow, that need to be healed, that are holding them back, limiting beliefs. And we see this also playing out in the collective. I don't remember when it was, a year or 2 ago, maybe even longer, sitting with someone, they were talking about how humans are going through this shift, and maybe you've heard about, like, the new human, the new Earth, and we were just discussing, like, "But what is that? What does that mean?" And it means what we were talking about it meaning at that time, what and she was this woman I was speaking with was talking about, how many of the mystics in our time, the kind of big spiritual thinkers, were referencing it as being a time where humans would begin to split into two different kind of realms of consciousness, two different realms of reality. And I remember at the time thinking, interesting, I can't imagine how that would happen, where it would almost be like we were living in two different parallel realities. Well, over the last year or two, I think we've all witnessed this beginning. And who knows how it will all play out, where it will end up. But we could certainly say that there are two different kind of ways of perceiving the world, of holding ourselves in the world, of holding others in the world, beginning to form. And so with all the things that have happened, and I listen to a lot of astrology, which I think of as just like overarching broader energy patterns that we're all moving within. If we look at the last few months, this last year, really, there's been so much, like I said, upheaval, so much drawing in, so much, so like we're no longer able to just kind of like float by on the surface. And so for this week, it's like we're really being called to anchor into what that new what perception of reality do we want to hold? What are we focusing on? And to really take a look at what it is we are choosing to anchor our attention in. Where are we placing our focus? And I read a really interesting piece of data that I thought just applied so much to this, which is that neuroscience shows that perception filters 99% of sensory data. This means that because of the wide array of data always coming at us, in order to not be overwhelmed, we our brain filters out 99% of it, and we're left with the percent that we perceive as reality. This is why so many people, can see a situation and perceive it completely differently, hold it completely differently, because we're all choosing to focus on something different, on a different, like 1% of data of everything that's happening in a situation. Isn't that fascinating? So it allows us we can only we consider then what's relevant, what's most meaningful based on that lens that we look through, right? What are our past experiences? What are our beliefs? What is the emotional state I'm in that all of that decides the focus of attention where I place my attention. Which 1% do I choose to perceive as reality? So, this tells us that perception is selective. We don't see reality as it is, we see it as the version of truth that we deem useful for ourselves, that we deem important based on the lens that we've crafted for ourselves. So, our focus then shapes our reality. What we expect or believe influences what we notice. And then that validates it and carries it forward, right? And we build this pattern. So it's also tells us then what we miss, right? That we're missing stuff based on that limiting focus that we have created, that limited lens. So when our awareness expands our possibility, when we become conscious of these filters, and we can begin to shift them, right? We can open up new ways of seeing, we can open up new ways of experiencing life, and we can begin to, when we understand that there's 99% of more directions we could place our focus, that we can then just shift the focus. But in order to do that, we have to be aware of the lens through which we're looking, and we have to desire to shift our focus. We have to understand if a focus is working for us or against us, right? So this week, the call to me is to really look at what you're focusing on and how are you selecting that focus. What is causing you to sum up a situation, to perceive um, a situation, a person, something going on in your life in the way that you do? And what are some alternate ways? It's a good practice to just say, like, how else could I be looking at this? In what other ways could I perceive this? And that can just broaden the awareness, where it's like opening up the scope a bit to then go, oh, which one would I choose then? Which one feels best in my body? Which one feels most aligned with the path forward that I desire for myself, for humanity, for the earth? And in recognizing that we have that choice and that there is a multitude of possibilities, then we are able to stand in our power and and choose our reality. So, and then, taking it a step further, when we're choosing our reality, we can then say, this is what I choose to have as my focus, as my perception, right? This is where I'm placing my focus so that I am holding this perception of reality. And and then I can choose to tend to that with my energy, and I can feel aligned with where I'm pouring my energy, where what I'm tending in my life to grow and what I'm nurturing. And um and really just I'm focusing my life force energy in a direction that feels resonant with what I desire. So this week, just check in with that. What is the perception? How can I broaden my lens? How can I tend to that, to the energy that I desire for myself, for humanity? What is that path forward? And maybe you'll notice, my last thing I want to say, that as you do that, the path forward that you thought was the right one, the way you thought something was going to go, um, the thing that once felt aligned, once you give yourself that ability to broaden perspective, to shift focus, to to be open for a new direction to develop, and to let, with the shedding of the moon right now, we just had the full moon last week, now we're in the shedding phase of the moon, to let that dissolve, to let that old way of focusing, to let that old path forward dissolve, so that that new focus, the new way of tending your energy, that new path forward can form. Thanks for being here, everyone, and have a fabulous week.